Welcome to Brainstorm MTG. I'm ELD, and this is Fast Effect. This is double speed vintage, and we've actually got Craig on a Storm list. It is something he's been playing for quite some time. I'm actually in the same boat on Dredge. I just kind of have it built, and it's performing quite well. And starting out, of course, with Bazaar of Baghdad, and actually going to be able to activate this on the first turn, largely because of digging toward Unmask. And actually do find it or had it in hand. Either way, going to have the best selection of black cards to discard once you've activated Bazaar. And we're going to see here Lotus, along with Defense Grid and a bunch of fast mana. And Sensei's Top, Force of Will, the only blue card in hand. This is a mobile setup, actually filmed on my phone from gaming, etc. And Sensei's Divining Top going to be taken. Paradoxical Outcome, a real major player in Vintage. It is Storm. Unlike years past, you're actually able to run a ton of blue cards in there. Cards like Force of Will and Mental Misstep to really protect your combo. And it looks like the shields are down and dredging is happening here. Bazaar activated during the upkeep. And that is hitting Golgari, Grave Troll, and Stinkweed Imp. The draw step dredges another Grave Troll. And then a second Bazaar comes down. And that's going to return 2 Bloodghast and trigger 2 Prized Amalgam. So Bloodghast going to enter on any land drop, and there's none better than Bazaar of Baghdad. Of course, to make sure that you have that plan coming together, even if you don't have lands in hand, the deck does run Dakmor Salvage, which is something you can dredge back into your hand. So there's Bloodghast, really a resilient threat and something that you have a lot of reliable access to, both as a body for attacking, but also for sacrificing to Cabal Therapy and Dread Returns. And it looks like Cabal Therapy going to get used here, creating 2 zombie tokens. And a lot of the time, Dredge doesn't run the counter spells, so particularly this build. There are some that run Mental Misstep and Force of Will. I do think the black version is better right now. And getting your opponent down to 0 cards is just really powerful. It does eliminate a lot of the power of a card like Brainstorm or a Jace, just where they're not able to convert those, kind of weaker dead cards into game winners. And a Dread Return on Colgan is actually going to go ahead and punch in for 10 damage. Colgan does give all your creatures haste, and those Prized Amalgams coming in means lethal is threatened here. Craig just has 1 draw off the top. He does get to filter that draw with the Sensei's Top. It looks like he hit a fetch land, and he's going to shuffle 1 more time. See, and actually hit something worth drawing with top. It is a lot to ask from here. A Paradoxical Outcome can do really broken things. Lotus being in the graveyard is a great help. That card really factors into a lot of their best case scenarios when they do start comboing off. And that is it. So game 1, a couple of Bazaars making quick work, and Unmask really slowing down a lot of the potential broken hands that Craig could have, getting rid of that Lotus. The other side of that could have been taking the Sensei's Top, leaving Craig with just a bunch of fast mana, but you can get punished very badly for that. One of the best cards in Craig's list is likely to be Time Twister. That card can draw in to a nut hand for Craig while eliminating my graveyard. So if you do play against Dredge in Vintage, Time Twister can be one of the best possible cards. That contrasts very strongly with cards like Wheel of Fortune, where they discard their hand and then draw. That typically just gets you killed. That will allow them to discard their hand and then start dredging aggressively 7 different times. And that usually just ends up filling the graveyard and filling the board with creatures basically just carrying out Dredge's plan for them. Or sometimes you do just have to go for it. Dredge is not going to kill you on your turn. So if the 7 are good enough, then perhaps you can close it out. But if they're not, you're almost certainly dead. Paradoxical outcome, just so strong as a card, comboing with just the best cards in the game, all of the original power, Moxes, Lotus. And I feel like these lists have really kind of refined over the last 6 months or so in particular. Are very powerful. Dredge has certainly had a lot more time to develop. For those of you who mostly play Legacy, this vintage Dredge list really rely on Bazaar of Baghdad. You actually run 4 Serum Powder along with the 4 Bazaar to ensure that you start with it. And you're going to be plus 90% or so. There will be some games where you end up mulling to 1 and just really unable to find anything. And there's a couple of points along the way where you might actually just decide that you're more likely to just unmask yourself or Cabal Therapy yourself and just start dredging that way. But versus most vintage decks, that type of slow dredge really not going to be good enough. I'd generally much rather have a 1-card hand with Bazaar of Baghdad than just discarding a Grave Troll and hoping to slow dredge to get there. Craig mulling pretty deep here. One thing you'll find when you are playing Dredge is a lot of players are going to mulligan until they have cards that really interact favorably with Dredge. I actually think a lot of the time it's done to a fault. I do think you have to recognize, which hands are going to be good enough versus Dredge. I just think a lot of the time people kind of misevaluate that. A lot of these decks in Vintage are quite powerful and could potentially race against Dredge, but sometimes they just end up throwing back those hands, fearing the worst from Dredge, and just really want to have Grafdigger's Cage, Tormod's Crypt, Nile Spellbomb. I mean, in Vintage, you have the entirety of Magic history, so there's no shortage of cards available to players to choose to be able to kind of shut down that powerful strategy, which is so hard to interact with your main deck cards. I'd also say Dredge in Vintage is in an interesting space because Deathrite Shaman is nowhere near as kind of omnipresent as it is in Legacy. It's unlikely to go a tournament and not run up against a Deathrite Shaman deck in Legacy, whereas in Vintage it's a fringe card. And there we go, a mull to 3 opening up on Leyline and the Bazaar. Leyline of the Void going to eliminate a lot of Craig's most explosive games as well, involving Yawgmoth's Will. And it looks like he actually had Ancestral Recall. So Hollow One comes down after discarding 3 cards to Bazaar. That's going to set a formidable clock against a mulligan that's so low. Crazy to think that Craig actually had the Ancestral. Mox Sapphire would have allowed him to potentially get right back in this game. But instead, we're going to see a bunch of dredging here, seeing a Narcomoeba and Prized Amalgam going hellbent here. This is a very fast clock here. Jackmore Salvage getting dredged back. That's going to be enough to just get a little bit more damage on board. Going to sacrifice Cabal Therapy, getting just 1 zombie token. Going to get that paradoxical outcome, it looks like. And going to sacrifice Bloodghast as well. So that's just going to completely strip Craig's hand and put 14 damage. Is that going to be 16? Let's see here. No, 14 damage on board. Those face down cards are Prized Amalgams. And looks like a little bit of a judge call. Oh, you know what that actually was? I remember, seeing as I was actually in this game, I actually had named Power Overwhelming. PO is a Hearthstone card as well as a Magic card. In Hearthstone, it is Power Overwhelming, and I accidentally named that. Luckily, that's not a Magic card. When you do name for Cabal Therapy, you have to name a actual card legal in the format. But that work is quickly wrapped up with a hodgepodge of creatures there. Hollow One, Bloodghast, Icarid actually came in at the end. That game essentially ended with the Unmasked taking the Ancestral Recall, and you see here just a little bit of the sideboard strategy. Got some Nature's Claim and Hollow Ones coming in, and I think throughout the day we'll hopefully see Hollow One doing some real work. It is a great way of sidestepping all of the graveyard hate that people have, because they really do tend to pile on in the Dredge matchup. Most decks are going to have in between 6 and 8 cards to interact there. You made it to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you want to help the channel, you can click like or subscribe, or you can check out some of our other videos covering Magic's most powerful formats. Thanks for watching.